During a game against the Warriors, cameras caught a tense moment between Lakers coach JJ Redick and Luka Doncic. Luka appeared frustrated after being subbed out, pulled his arm away mid-conversation, and an awkward missed high five followed. But what happened next between Luka Doncic and JJ Redick? Let's get into the details. The explosion nobody expected. There are moments in the NBA that make you stop everything you're doing. Moments that make you put down your phone, lean forward, and say out loud, did that really just happen? What took place on the night of February 28, 2026, inside Chase Center in San Francisco, was exactly that kind of moment. Because on that night, during what should have been a feel-good, dominant, lopsided victory for the Los Angeles Lakers over the Golden State Warriors, the entire basketball world witnessed something that no one could have predicted. Something that, to this very day, people are still talking about, still debating, and still trying to make sense of. The Lakers were crushing the Warriors. And we're not talking about a close game that got a little tense. No, we're talking about a 129-101 blowout. The kind of game where you'd expect the winning team to be all smiles, all high fives, all good vibes on the bench. Luka Doncic had been doing his thing all night long, putting up 26 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds. The man was cooking. Everything was going right for the Lakers. So you would naturally assume that there would be zero problems. But that assumption would be dead wrong. Late in the fourth quarter, with the game already decided, Redick pulled Doncic out. A normal substitution, nothing out of the ordinary. But what happened next was anything but normal. As Doncic walked toward the bench, Redick approached him and grabbed his arm firmly, apparently trying to discuss a play or some aspect of Doncic's defensive effort. And Luka, he wasn't having it. He brushed right past his coach, didn't stop, didn't look back, just kept walking. Now, that alone would have been enough to get people talking. A superstar blowing off his head coach on national television. That's a headline, but it didn't stop there, not even close. Redick followed Doncic to the bench, where a brief verbal exchange took place, characterized by emphatic gestures from both parties. You could see it in their body language. This wasn't a calm, collected conversation between two guys who were on the same page. This was tension, real, visible, unmistakable tension. Redick said something, Doncic fired something back, and then, after delivering what looked like one final remark, Redick turned his back and walked toward the scorer's table. And that's when it happened. That's when Luka Doncic, a 6'7", 230-pound superstar, rose up from that bench like a man who had just been disrespected in front of the whole world.
I'll beat your... That's what Luka said to JJ. Luka was seemingly so angry.
Think about that for a second. Those aren't words you hear between teammates in most locker rooms. Those definitely aren't words you hear a player say to his own head coach. But according to multiple reports, that is exactly what Luka Doncic said.
He got up off of the bench and was going to walk down and confront JJ.
He wasn't just venting from his seat. He wasn't just muttering under his breath. No, Luka stood up with the full intention of walking down that bench and getting in JJ Redick's face in the middle of a game on live television.
And so now JJ Redick said what he had to say and tried to walk away, and Luka was like, nah, bro, you ain't about to turn your back on me. And
that right there tells you everything you need to know about where Luka's head was at in that moment. JJ said his piece and tried to walk away, and Luka basically said, "You're not about to talk to me like that," and just walk off. That is not the reaction of a man who's a little annoyed. That is the reaction of a man who feels deeply, personally disrespected.
Luka said, man, I'll beat your... and stood up to go and do it.
And the only reason this didn't turn into something way, way worse was because of one man, Jared Vanderbilt.
And Vando said, come on, man, cool out. Cool out, bro. It ain't about nothing.
Vanderbilt stood up, clapped loudly, and physically positioned himself between Doncic and Redick, effectively de-escalating the situation before it could intensify any further. Fans and analysts alike called it a veteran awareness move, the kind of thing you only see from a guy who truly understands the moment and knows exactly what needs to happen to keep things from going off the rails. If Vanderbilt doesn't get up off that bench, if Vanderbilt doesn't put his body between those two men, who knows what would have happened next?
Player doesn't stand up off of the bench and threaten their coach.
And that's the point that so many people are missing. This wasn't just two guys being competitive. This wasn't just adrenaline. A player threatening his coach during a game they were winning by almost 30 points. That doesn't just happen because of one bad play.
They probably are bros and friendly.
Something is bubbling underneath, something that's been building for a while. And to understand what that something is, you have to go all the way back to the beginning, back to the moment Luka Doncic became a Los Angeles Laker in the first place. From dream come, true to breaking point. To truly understand how we got to the point where Luka Doncic is threatening his head coach on a basketball court, you need to rewind the clock. You need to go back to the night that changed everything. Because the truth is, Luka Doncic never asked for any of this. He never wanted to leave Dallas. He never pushed for a trade. He never schemed behind the scenes to land in Los Angeles. What happened to him was something he had absolutely zero control over, and it broke his heart. On February 2nd, 2025, the Dallas Mavericks traded the reigning NBA scoring champion to the Los Angeles Lakers in a 3-team deal that also involved the Utah Jazz. In return, Dallas got Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. The trade sent shockwaves through the entire league. Journalists called it the most shocking trade in NBA history. Executives reacted with disbelief. Players around the league were stunned. Patrick Mahomes literally tweeted, "Wait, what?" And Luka, he was reportedly in tears. His father publicly called the decision undeserved. Doncic later said in interviews, "They made a decision. I don't know why." The man who had given everything to the Mavericks, 5 consecutive All-NBA first-team selections, a trip to the NBA Finals, records for triple-doubles and high-scoring performances, was shipped out without warning. Mavericks GM Nico Harrison initiated the deal, citing concerns over Doncic's conditioning, weight reportedly fluctuating up to 270 pounds, and his preference for personal medical staff over the team's. Harrison avoided committing to Doncic's looming 5-year, $345 million Supermax extension. It was a cold, calculated business decision, and Doncic was the one who paid the price. But here's the thing, even through all that pain, even through all that heartbreak, Luka showed up in Los Angeles with a smile on his face and a fire in his chest.
The moment I step on court, I told to myself, this is what I do, this is what I enjoy most doing, so I'm just excited to be here to start this new journey.
Those aren't the words of a man who's given up. Those are the words of a man who has decided to turn his pain into purpose. Luka came to LA with one goal and one goal only.
This for me is a fresh start. I get to play in LA, I get to play in the greatest club in the world.
And early on, there was every reason to believe that this partnership between Luka and JJ Redick was going to be something special. Because the truth is, these two men had history, real history, good history. Back in the 2020-21 season, Redick was traded to the Mavericks for the final stretch of his playing career, and he and Doncic played together in 13 games. Even though Redick's body was breaking down, their bond was instant. Redick called Doncic special, both on and off the court, highlighting his humility in the locker room, similar to stars like Stephen Curry. And Doncic, a man who almost never does media, appeared on Redick's podcast, The Old Man and the Three, not once, but twice, a rarity for the private Slovenian star, who later said, "You don't see me going on podcasts. I went on his podcast twice, so you know how much respect I have for him." So when Redick got the Lakers coaching job in 2024, and when Doncic was traded to LA shortly after, it seemed like the basketball gods had written the perfect script. Two men who already had trust. Two men who already had chemistry. Two men who already understood each other. You could feel it during training camp. The energy was electric.
I don't like you. Are you done with the shenanigans?
That right there, that's the sound of two guys who are comfortable with each other. The kind of playful trash talk that only happens when there's real friendship underneath. Redick was loose. Luka was loose. And the whole team fed off that energy.
All right, here we go, here we go. Terrific day yesterday. We definitely got 1% better.
Stacked days, that was the mantra. Get 1% better every single day. And for a while, it worked. Luka was balling. The team was winning. Everything was moving in the right direction. But then the cracks started to show. See, JJ Redick isn't the kind of coach who lets things slide. He's direct, he's blunt, and he holds everyone accountable, even his biggest stars. Redick publicly urged Doncic to improve defensively, stating that if he doesn't lower his butt and defend, he won't close games. That's not the kind of thing a player like Luka, a 5-time All-NBA superstar, a man who has been the undisputed king of every team he's ever been on, wants to hear said about him publicly. And it wasn't just the defense. Reports highlighted Doncic's frequent referee interactions as a point of contention, potentially disrupting team focus. His conditioning was questioned. His commitment was questioned. And for a man who was blindsided by a trade he never wanted, who left a city that felt like home, who showed up in Los Angeles with nothing but determination, those critiques hit different. Redick reportedly called Doncic out of shape and not in championship shape in team contexts, fueling internal debates about whether this was accountability or alienation. And all the while, the Lakers' record, solid at 36-24 but sitting in 6th place in the Western Conference, wasn't silencing any doubts. The team's overall energy was questioned, with observers noting a lack of championship vibes since the season's start. So when that moment happened against the Warriors, when Redick grabbed Luka's arm, when Luka brushed past, when words were exchanged and threats were made, it wasn't just just about one play. It wasn't just about one substitution. It was about everything. Every critique, every public call-out, every moment where Luka felt like the man who was supposed to have his back was instead putting him on blast.
I mean, the Lakers could win it, but they have to get that situation straight.
And that's the question everyone is asking right now. Can they get this situation straight? Can these two men find a way to coexist? Or has this thing already gone too far? The fallout and what comes next. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours of that confrontation on the Lakers bench, fan-captured clips had proliferated on platforms like X, Instagram, and YouTube, amassing millions of views. Everyone had something to say. Everyone had an opinion. And depending on who you asked, you got a completely different answer about what it all meant. On one side, you had the people who saw this as a death sentence for the Redick-Doncic partnership. Fans on social media were merciless. On X, one user declared that JJ will be gone before Luka. Another said, "I can assure you that if this is the case, that the Lakers will be saying goodbye to JJ." And one fan put it in the most painful terms possible, writing that Luka went from being a king to now a prince. Never easy. That last one stings because there's a kernel of truth in it. In Dallas, Luka was the undisputed franchise player. The offense revolved around him. Every play, every decision, every moment went through number 77. But in LA, he's sharing the spotlight with LeBron James. He's playing within a system that emphasizes ball movement and defensive connectivity over the kind of heliocentric, high-usage style that made him a superstar. And for a man with Luka's competitive fire, that adjustment hasn't been easy. But then, on the other side of the debate, you had people who thought the whole thing was being blown way out of proportion. Former player and current analyst Charlie Villanueva acknowledged the optics were bad, calling Doncic's reaction a bad look and urging him to be mindful of the cameras. But even Villanueva stopped short of saying the relationship was broken beyond repair. He chalked it up more to Luka's emotional nature than to any deep-seated hatred between the two. And then there was Rich Paul, the CEO of Clutch Sports, one of the most powerful men in all of basketball. And Rich Paul had a very different take on the whole situation. Paul viewed the arguments as constructive, stating that they foster a healthy dynamic for success and that the fact that there's care shown, passion shown, and competitive nature shown, I think that's healthy. In Paul's eyes, this wasn't two men who hated each other. This was two men who cared so deeply about winning that their emotions sometimes boiled over. And in the high-pressure world of professional basketball, that kind of passion can actually be a good thing if it's channeled the right way. And here's where things get really interesting, because despite all the drama, despite all the viral videos and social media hot takes, JJ Redick did something after that game that most people seem to have completely forgotten about. He praised Luka, not in a fake political, covering his tracks kind of way, in a real, genuine, detailed kind of way. During his post-game press conference, when a reporter asked about Doncic's performance, Redick didn't hesitate.
Yeah, I mean, there's Coach K used to always use the word daring. You know, there's a daring to Luka's game.
Daring. That's not a word you use to describe someone you've given up on. That's not a word you use about a player you can no longer work with. That's a word you use about someone whose talent takes your breath away.
It's what makes, one of the many reasons that makes him such a special player.
Special. Daring. These are the words JJ Redick chose on the same night that Luka Doncic threatened to beat his behind on the bench to describe his star player. And that tells you something important about where Redick's head is at. This isn't a coach who's checked out. This isn't a man who's given up on the partnership. This is a man who is trying with everything he has to push a generational talent to be even better than he already is. And it wasn't just about the flashy plays. Redick went on to praise the things that don't always show up in the highlight reels: the basketball IQ, the passing vision, the ability to read a defense before it even sets.
Yeah, we have a lot of good guys on our team. Love these guys. His teammates love him.
His teammates love him. That matters, because if the locker room had turned on Luka, if his own teammates had started questioning his attitude or his commitment, then you'd have a real problem. But that's not what's happening here.
He's a terrific teammate. It's easy to root for his success.
A terrific teammate, easy to root for. Those words coming from JJ Redick on that specific night carry enormous weight. They tell you that despite the fireworks on the bench, despite the threat, despite the viral moment that everyone in the basketball world was dissecting frame by frame, the foundation between these two men hasn't crumbled. Not yet. And there's historical precedent that supports the idea that this kind of tension can actually lead to greatness. Analysts have drawn comparisons to Steve Kerr and Draymond Green, or or Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant, relationships where fierce clashes ultimately forge stronger, more championship caliber teams. The history of the NBA is littered with examples of coaches and superstars who butted heads, who screamed at each other, who pushed each other to the absolute brink, and then went on to win championships together. But that only works if both sides are willing to meet in the middle, and that's the part that nobody can predict. Doncic signed a 3-year, $165 million extension in August 2025, cementing himself as the face of the franchise for years to come. He's not going anywhere. He's committed. And so far, Redick has shown nothing but commitment to making this work, even when the spotlight gets hot. LakeshowLife.com argued the incident is completely misinterpreted, framing it as two adrenaline-fueled competitors clashing briefly, rather than evidence of any genuine enmity. But the Lakers sit at 36-24 in the 6th spot in the Western Conference, with the playoffs right around the corner. The team has dealt with injuries limiting full-strength lineups to just a handful of games, ball dominance questions between Doncic and LeBron James, and a defensive rating that dropped to 25th league-wide after losing Anthony Davis. The margin for error is razor thin, and in that kind of environment, unresolved tension between a coach and his best player can be the difference between a deep playoff run and an early exit.
Luka needs to understand his place as a player on his team, and he needs to do what the coach is asking him to do.
That's the uncomfortable truth. No matter how talented you are, no matter how many points you score, no matter how many All-NBA teams you've been selected to, at the end of the day, there has to be a level of trust and respect between you and the man drawing up the plays. And right now, the entire basketball world is watching to see whether Luka Doncic and JJ Redick can find that trust again, or whether this whole thing is headed for a collision that neither one of them can walk away from. One thing's for sure, the next time these two are on that sideline together, every single camera in the building is going to be pointed right at them, because when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers, the drama never stops. And this story is far from over. If you enjoyed watching this video, then you can go ahead and click on any of the cards on your screen for more.